Thank you, Washington. Let me thank all of you for coming out. Let me thank Ben Jealous. Let me thank Cornel West. And let me thank all of you for being part of the political revolution. We have Thank you. You know, a little bit over a year ago, we began this campaign. And what the punditry thought is that the campaign would not go very far. Well, here we are in mid-June, and we're still standing. And we are standing after having won 22 states. And the results have not yet come in from California. We have won over 10 million votes. And in every state and non-state, I am aware of this issue here in Washington, D.C. And I hope that the next time I'm back, we're going to be talking about the state of Washington, D.C. But in every state and non-state that we have run in, we have won by very large votes, the young people. And the reason that that is significant is that this campaign is based on a vision that our country must focus on social justice, on economic justice, on racial justice, on environmental justice. And when the overwhelming majority of young people support that vision, that will be the future of America. This campaign has done as well as it has because we are doing something unusual in American politics. We're telling the truth. And the truth has to do with the reality of our lives as we experience it, not what we see on corporate television. And what is that reality? That reality is that we hear all of the time that we are a democracy. But the fact of the matter is, even excluding the issue of Washington, D.C., not having elected representatives in the Congress, is that all of you know that increasingly big money is buying elections. Right now, you have a couple of brothers called the Koch brothers. They are worth tens of billions of dollars, and they are determined to purchase the United States Senate for right-wing Republicans. When you have a handful of billionaires spending unlimited sums of money, you can call it whatever you want, but it sure is not democracy. In fact, it sounds to me like oligarchy. And what this campaign has been talking about from day one is the trend that we are seeing in our political life, in our economic life, in our media life, of fewer and fewer wealthy people controlling this nation. And that type of drift toward oligarchy is something we must prevent. And that means overturning this disastrous Citizens United Supreme Court decision. It means moving to public funding of elections. Can you imagine two people, the Koch brothers, one family, in the process now of purchasing the United States Senate? My view is not only should we overturn Citizens United, but we should move toward public funding of elections. But it is not just a corrupt campaign finance system that we have got to address. It is a rigged economy. This is, if you add it all up, the wealthiest nation in the history of the world, but most people don't know that because almost all of the new income and wealth is going to the top 1%. The United States is not supposed to be a country which has more income and wealth inequality than any other major country on earth. We are not supposed to be a country where the top 0.1% now owns almost 90% of the wealth of this country. We are not supposed to be a country where the 20 wealthiest people own more wealth than the bottom half of America, 150 million Americans. Income and wealth inequality and a rigged economy means that we are seeing a proliferation of millionaires and billionaires, and yet walk 5 blocks away from here and we got people sleeping out on the street. A rigged economy is when a mother goes out to work and yet the wages that she earns are so low she cannot afford decent quality child care for her children or provide the security her kids need. A rigged economy is when the United States has the highest rate of childhood poverty of almost any major country on earth. A rigged economy is when CEOs who make tens of millions a year cut back on the wages, cut back on the health care, cut back on the pensions of their workers. A rigged economy is when Wall Street's greed and recklessness and illegal behavior destroys the economy and then the Congress bails them out. And a rigged economy is when Wall Street's illegal behavior ends up with no Wall Street executives going to jail. A rigged economy is when mom is working, dad's working, the kids are working, and 57% of all new income goes to the top 1%. Brothers and sisters, our job is to create an economy that works for all of us, not just the 1%. I have been in this campaign to Native American reservations. I was to Pine Ridge in South Dakota, and do you know that in Pine Ridge, life expectancy is lower than in many third world countries? I have been to Flint, Michigan, where the children are drinking water that is poisoned. I've been to Detroit, Michigan, where the public school system is on the verge of fiscal collapse. I've been to Baltimore, Maryland, where tens of thousands of people there are addicted to heroin and they cannot get the treatment that they need. This is the United States of America. We should not be having 47 million people living in poverty. This is the United States of America. We should not be living in a country where the very, very rich get richer while almost everybody else gets poorer. This is the United States of America, where in the last 25 years we have seen the middle class shrink and shrink and shrink, while almost all new wealth goes to the people on top. That is not what this country is about, and together we are going to change that. This campaign is not just about a corrupt campaign finance system. It is not just about a rigged economy. It is about a broken criminal justice system. Every person here and every person in this country should be embarrassed by the fact that we have more people in jail than any other country on earth. Why in God's name are we spending $80 billion a year to lock up 2.2 million fellow Americans? And it's our job to understand the cause of that issue and to resolve it. And that means, for a start, we know that in community after community throughout this country, in inner cities and in rural America, we have youth unemployment rates of 30, 40, 50%. And when young people are hanging out on street corners, when they are not in school, when they are not at work, bad things can happen. So what I think, and I know you think, is that it makes a lot more sense for us to be investing in jobs and education for our young people rather than jails and incarceration. I want our young people in school, not rotting in jail cells. I want this country to have the best educated population in the world, not more people in jail than any other country. But when we look at the criminal justice issue, it is not just the fact that we have high youth unemployment. It is also necessary for us to look at local police departments all across this country. Now, I was a mayor for 8 years in Burlington, Vermont. Work with police officers all over this country. The average police officer works hard, is honest, and is trying to do a good job. But like any other public official, when a police officer breaks the law, that officer must be held accountable. It is time for us to demilitarize local police departments. It is time for us to make local police departments reflect the diversity of the communities they serve. It is time to end corporate ownership of prisons and detention centers. It is time for us to have a law enforcement culture which says that lethal force, the shooting of somebody, is the last response, not the first response. It is time for us to take a hard look at the so-called war on drugs. Millions of Americans over the last 30 years have received police records because of possession of marijuana. And if you are a 19-year-old kid going out looking for a job, having a police record does not help. That is why I believe that at a time when the Federal Controlled Substance Act lists marijuana as a Schedule I drug, it is time to take marijuana out of the Federal Controlled Substance Act. But when we talk about drugs, there is another issue that we have got to put front and center on the table. And that is, we have an epidemic in this country of opiate and heroin addiction. Every day, people are dying of overdoses of heroin or opiates. But to address this crisis, we have got to be smart. And being smart means that when we deal with substance abuse or addiction, we understand that we cannot treat those issues as criminal issues, but as health issues. And that means that we need a revolution in mental health treatment in this country. People in America should be able to get the mental health treatment they need when they need it, not 6 months from now. And by the way, this is not just drug abuse or addiction. There are thousands of people walking the streets of this country who are suicidal and or homicidal. I want those people to be treated and their problems to be treated like any other health-related issue. I don't want them to have to fill out 50 forms and maybe get treated 8 months from now. If you're facing a mental health crisis in America, you should get the treatment you need today, not 8 months from now. This campaign is listening to ordinary Americans and not just wealthy campaign contributors. And what I am extraordinarily proud of is that this campaign has received more individual campaign contributions than any campaign in American history up to this point. We have received 8 million individual campaign contributions. Anyone know the average contribution? $27. Now, you know what that means? what that means, despite all the rhetoric out there, we have shown the world that you can run a winning national campaign without being dependent on Wall Street, drug companies, or big money interests. This campaign has been listening to working people. And what working people are telling me is that they cannot make it on a starvation minimum wage of $7.25 an hour, that we have got to raise the federal minimum wage to a living wage, $15 an hour. And when we talk about equitable wages, we have also got to understand that it is not acceptable that women today are making 79 cents on the dollar compared to men. That has nothing to do with economics. It is just old-fashioned sexism, and together we're going to end that. And I know that every man here is going to stand with the women in the fight for pay equity. Now, once a month, federal government comes out with a report on official unemployment, usually around 5% lately. Anyone here believe that real unemployment nationally is 5%? You're right, it's not. There is another federal report, which doesn't get quite so much publicity, which adds not only those who are unemployed, but those who have given up looking for work, and those that are working part-time when they want to work full-time. That number means that almost 10% of our people are unemployed. And obviously in certain areas of the country, the number is much higher than that. That is why we need a massive federal jobs program to put Americans back to work. We should be hiring teachers, not firing teachers. We should be creating the best child care system in the world, not maintain a dysfunctional system. Once upon a time, the United States had the best infrastructure in the world. Roads and bridges and water systems and wastewater plants and airports and rail. We had the best rail system in the world. No longer the case. We can create up to 13 million good-paying jobs, rebuilding our infrastructure, which is exactly what I intend to do. When we talk about why the middle class has been disappearing for 30 years, one of the reasons is a disastrous trade policy which has allowed corporate America to shut down in this country and move to low-wage countries abroad. We have a message for corporate America, and that is, if you want us to buy your products, start manufacturing them here in the United States. This campaign is listening to young people. And young people are catching on. They are the future of America, and they are damn determined to shape the future of America. What this campaign is about is thinking outside of the box, beyond the status quo. Think about this for a second. Everybody here knows, no debate, we are living in a highly competitive global economy. Everybody knows that to succeed today and in the future, we need the best educated workforce in the world. No one denies that. Our job, therefore, is to encourage people, not just young people, but in a technologically changing society, all people, to get the best education that they can. Now, 40 years ago, you had a high school degree, you were doing okay. High school degree would enable you to go out and probably get a middle-class job. That was 40 years ago, not today. Today, when we talk about public education, it is no longer good enough to talk about first grade through 12th grade. We have got to talk about public education, meaning free tuition at public colleges and universities. Does anybody here think that that is a radical idea? It is an absolutely commonsensical idea. It will happen sooner or later. Our job is to make it sooner. I want every child here in Washington, D.C. and in Vermont, regardless of their income, to understand that if they study hard, if they do well in school, yes, they will be able to get a college education. And that is what America is supposed to be about. Then anybody can make it into the middle class, regardless of the income of your families. Anybody here have student debt they're struggling with? All right? Now again, think about this. If our job is to encourage people to get the best education that they can, why are we punishing millions of people for getting a college education? What I believe we have got to do is to make it possible for everybody who has a student debt to refinance their loans at the lowest interest rates they can find. Now, my opponents and the establishment media, well, they say, well, you know, Bernie, you're Santa Claus. You're giving away all of these things. You're giving away free tuition at colleges. You're going to lower student debt. How are you going to pay for it? And here is the point that we have got to address. In the last 25 years, there has been a massive transfer of wealth from the middle class to the top 0.1%. Our job is to transfer that money back into the hands of the middle class. Eight years ago, as all of you know, against my vote, Congress bailed out Wall Street. Wall Street's greed, its recklessness, and its illegal behavior nearly destroyed the economy. Millions of people lost their jobs, their homes, their life savings. Congress bailed them out. Well, I think if Congress can bail out Wall Street, it is Wall Street's time to help the middle class of this country. And that is why I believe we must impose a tax on Wall Street speculation. And that would more than cover free tuition at public colleges and universities and lowering student debt. Now, Wall Street doesn't like this idea. But I say, you know what, Wall Street, you're going to have to learn you no longer are going to get it all. This campaign is listening to the African American community. And the African American community is asking all of us, how does it happen that we can spend trillions of dollars on a war in Iraq we never, ever should have gotten into? No problem. We can bail out Wall Street. No problem. We can give tax breaks to billionaires. No problem. But somehow, when it comes to rebuilding inner cities in America, providing good education, good health care, affordable housing, somehow we seem not to have the money. And what this campaign is about is making it clear, together we are going to change our national priorities. No more tax breaks for the rich. They're going to start paying their fair share of taxes. No more wars that we should never have gotten into in the first place. But yes to rebuilding our inner cities, putting Americans to work, creating the kind of environment that our children require. And this campaign is also about telling those Republican governors all across this country, we will no longer allow you to suppress the vote. People have fought too hard and too long for cowardly Republican governors to try to make it harder for people of color, for young people, for old people to participate in the political process. And I say to those cowardly Republican governors, if you don't have enough guts to participate in free and fair elections, get out of politics, get a new job. This campaign is listening to the Latino community. And what the Latino community is telling the world is that there are 11 million undocumented people in this country, many of them living in the shadows, many of them living in fear, and many of them being exploited every day on the job. I just came back from California and we visited Central California and talked to farm workers there. And what we're seeing in that part of the world and all over this country is that people who have no legal rights can be forced to work longer hours than they're supposed to, be paid wages lower than they're supposed to, have terrible working conditions, but they have no recourse because they have no legal rights. That has got to change. This Congress must own up to its responsibilities, end a broken immigration system, and move toward citizenship and comprehensive immigration reform. And if Congress does not pass comprehensive immigration reform and a path towards citizenship, I will use the executive powers of the presidency to move in that direction. This campaign is listening to a people whose pain is almost never heard, and that is the Native American people. A people of great dignity. Now, here is a people who have been lied to, who have been cheated, who have signed treaties which have been abrogated from way before this country even became a country. And yet, despite all of that, we owe the Native American people a debt of gratitude that we can never fully repay. If you think about the best parts of our culture, much of it comes from the first Americans. Think for a moment. Think about the lessons that they have taught us. And maybe this is the most profound lesson. And that is that as human beings, we are part of nature. Not a complicated idea, but a profound idea which tells us we must live with nature. And as we can see increasingly every day, if we continue to destroy nature, we are destroying the human species. And yet, despite all of the wisdom the Native American people have given us on their reservations and in their communities all across this country, unemployment and poverty sky high, access to decent education and health care abysmally low. Our job is to totally transform our relationship to the Native American people, and that is what I intend to do if elected president. Now, I know that, as you all know, Donald Trump is, among many other things. So you didn't know that Donald Trump, among his many other attributes, is an extraordinarily brilliant scientist. You didn't know. He doesn't like to brag because he's a modest guy. And he has studied climate change for decades. And after exhaustive study, he has come to the conclusion that climate change is a hoax. Now, on the other hand, I have, as a member of the Senate Committee on the Environment, I have talked to people other than Donald Trump on this issue. And they have a slightly different perspective. They believe, A, climate change is very real. B, climate change is caused by human activity. And C, climate change is already doing devastating harm in our country and countries all over the world. And this is what they tell us. And this is scary stuff, but we had better listen. What they tell us is if we do not get our act together in a short window of opportunity, a bad situation will become much worse. And that means more drought, more floods, more extreme weather disturbances, more acidification of the ocean, more rising sea levels. And you know what else it means? It means that there will be more international conflict as countries and people fight for limited natural resources. Our job is to tell the fossil fuel industry that their short-term profits are not more important than the future of this planet. We have a moral responsibility. You know who we are? We are the custodians of this planet. And guess what? Ain't another planet. This is it. Destroy this one. Our children and our grandchildren have nowhere else to go. So I believe that we have a moral responsibility to transform our energy system away from fossil fuel to energy efficiency and sustainable energy. And by the way, when we do that in an aggressive way, we can create millions of decent paying jobs. And when we work with other countries, oh, by the way, we save the planet. What this campaign is asking people time and again in different ways to think outside of the box. Don't accept the analysis or the options that the corporate media gives you or that Congress gives you. You know, the options are not, should we have a great debate on whether we cut nutrition programs for children or whether we cut education. Those are our options. What do you think? We reject those options. At a time of massive income and wealth inequality, the other option not put on the table is that the billionaires and corporate America will start paying their fair share of taxes. And what this campaign is about, whether it's education, I mentioned free tuition at public colleges and universities. Do all of you know that that already exists in Germany? It exists in Scandinavia. This is not a radical idea. And when we talk about human needs, when we talk about affordable housing, where there is in city after city, you know, when I was a kid, the expectation was that families should pay 25 or 30% max of their incomes for housing. Do you know that? You're laughing because today all over this country, people are paying 50 or 60%. Now, how the hell do you have money left over to buy food, to keep your house warm, to put gas in the car, if you're paying 50% or 60% for affordable housing? So our job is to build millions of units of affordable housing. Our job is not to accept that fellow Americans are sleeping out on the street a few blocks away from here. Never accept that as a reality. We can change it. And when we talk about human needs, it's affordable housing, it is education, it is decent and affordable nutrition, but it is also something else where we are way behind other countries, not discussed very much in media, but all of you know or should know. The United States is the only major country on earth not to guarantee health care to all people as a right. Only major country. Go to Germany, go to Scandinavia, go to the UK, go to Holland, go to France. Every person, go to Canada. I live in Burlington, Vermont, 50 miles away from the Canadian border. Not a big deal. Everybody in Canada has health care as a right. We are the only major country that does not exist. I think it's time to end that international embarrassment. So I've been criticized for saying this, so let me say it again. In my view, health care is a human right, not a privilege. That means if you're rich or you're poor, you're young or you're old, you should be able to go to the doctor when you need to go to the doctor. Now, the Affordable Care Act has done some very good things, but we still have a long way to go. We got 29 million Americans today who have no health insurance. We have even more, including many of you, who are underinsured with high deductibles and high copayments. Is that right? Anybody know how many people in this country die every year because they don't get to a doctor when they should? That's right, 40,000. I talk to doctors all of the time, and you know what they say? They say that patients come into their offices much, much sicker than they should be. And the doctor said, why didn't you come in a year ago when you first felt your symptom? And what do people say? They say, I didn't have any health insurance, or I had a high deductible, I couldn't afford it. And 40,000 people a year die because they go to the doctor too late. And that is why I believe we should pass a Medicare for all single-payer program. The issue is not what is right or wrong. Anybody with any sense of morality understands that health care should be a right, that it is a disgrace that we have so many people uninsured and underinsured. That's not the issue. The issue is the power of the private insurance companies and the pharmaceutical industry. And I think it is time that we took them on, that we told the drug companies they cannot continue to charge us the highest prices in the world by far for the medicine we need. You got 1 out of 5 Americans cannot afford to fill the prescriptions their doctors write. You got old people who are cutting their pills in half because they can't afford the medicine they require. And yet, last year, the 5 major drug companies made $50 billion in profit. Enough is enough. We are going to tell the pharmaceutical industry they will stop ripping off the American people. What this campaign is about is learning the most important lesson that American history can teach us. And that is that real change never takes place from the top on down, but always from the bottom on up. That is the history of America. And I want you to think about it. Think about 100+ years ago, there were workers all over this country who were working 7 days a week, 12 hours a day. They had no rights at all. But with great courage, they organized and they stood up and they told their employers, we're not animals, we're not beasts of burdens, we are human beings. And they stood up and they formed trade unions. "150 years ago, amidst the abomination of slavery, there were African Americans and their allies, even back then and all the way to the future, to today, who were standing up and sometimes going to jail, sometimes getting killed, sometimes getting beaten, sometimes losing their jobs. But they stood up, and over the years, millions of people said, this country will end racism and bigotry and discrimination. And think about the courage of those people. Know that in the South, if there was a meeting of black and white workers, it was against the law and they could be arrested. Think about 100 years ago today. Women in America did not have the right to vote, to get the jobs they wanted, to get the education they wanted. 10-year-old girls don't know that, but it is true. But women stood up and they fought back. And at a time when the establishment and the ruling class of the period said to them, your job as a woman is to stay home and have babies, Women stood up and said, "You will not define us. We will define ourselves." Now, it is easy to look back and to say women didn't have the right to vote. That's crazy. But understand what it was like in that culture, in that time. The courage that those women showed. Think about something even more contemporary. Think about the fact that if we were here 10 years ago and somebody jumped up and said, "You know, Bernie, I think that by the year 2015, gay marriage will be legal in every state in the country." If somebody had said that 10 years ago, do you know what the person next to her would have said? Would have said, "You're crazy. There is too much homophobia. There is too much prejudice. There is too much bigotry. It can't happen." But what happened is the gay community and their straight allies fought an incredibly courageous battle. And what they said loudly and proudly is that people in this country should have the right to love each other regardless of their gender. Think about something even more contemporary. If we were here 5 years ago, think about it, 5 years ago, no time at all, somebody jumps up and says, "You know, Bernie, this federal minimum wage of $7.25, it's a starvation wage. We got to raise it to $15 an hour." Person next to him, think about this. What would the person next to him say? "You're crazy. $15 an hour, you want to more than double the federal minimum wage. Maybe we'll get $9, maybe you can get 10, $15. Too radical, too crazy. You're an extremist." Ah, you're laughing. But what happened? What happened is that workers in the fast food industry, in McDonald's, in Burger King, in Wendy's, and I had the privilege to be out on the streets marching with them right here in D.C. They stood up. They stood up and they said, "You know what? We can't make it on $7.25, $8 an hour, $10 an hour. And we need $15 an hour." And then you know what happened? Once the people of this country began to deal with that issue, way out in Seattle, City Council passed $15 an hour. And then Los Angeles and San Francisco, $15 an hour. And California, New York State, and then suddenly cities and towns all over this country, $15 an hour. So what seemed impossible, what seemed radical just a few years ago is now commonplace. $15 an hour. Oh, yeah, that's what we need. All right. So here is the point of all of that. What seems radical today will seem mainstream tomorrow if we stand together and make those changes. And what I am seeing all over this country, this is what I'm seeing, and this is extraordinary. From coast to coast, and I've been from coast to coast, people are standing up and they're looking around them and they say, "You know what? Having the top 1% owning more wealth than the bottom 90%, unacceptable. Seeing the middle class year after year decline and people having to work 2 or 3 jobs, unacceptable. Having veterans sleep out on the street, unacceptable. Having senior citizens living on $10,000, $11,000 a year in adequate Social Security, unacceptable. Having young people leave school $50,000 in debt, unacceptable. Having our infrastructure collapse in front of us while so many workers are sitting out there idle, ready to rebuild that infrastructure, unacceptable. So people all over this country are looking at the status quo, and they understand that it is too late for establishment politics and establishment economics, that we need real change in this country. And what people also understand is that no president, not Bernie Sanders or anybody else, can do it alone. That what we need in this country are millions of people standing up, fighting back, and demanding a government that represents all of us, not just the 1%. And that is what this campaign is all about. And on next Tuesday, in a few days, here in Washington, you will be having the very last primary of the Democratic nominating process. It would be extraordinary if the people of Washington, our nation's capital, stood up and told the world that they are ready to lead this country into a political revolution. Thank you all very much.